So in tutorial, you're going to talk about research strategies for this assignment. So I'm going to assume that you got some facts that you would like to add to this and are ready to add them. Okay. So when you're ready to add something from your research, what we're going to do is go to Review and then click Track Changes. And that makes it such that anything that I type now is going to be highlighted in red and underlined. Suppose I want to add the fact that physic gardens were mostly for academic and science goals, whereas botanical gardens have aesthetic, economic, and environmental purposes. And of course, that fact didn't come out of thin air. I didn't just make this up off the top of my head. For every sentence that you add, or sort of set of sentences, you must include a citation. So you must tell us where you're getting this fact from. Nothing should be added without being associated with a citation. For the citations, we're going to use footnotes. So I'll just go to the References menu and say Insert Footnote. Okay. Now I want to turn track changes off for the stuff I'm going to add in the footnotes, because that doesn't count towards my 500 words. So you're going to add 500 words that are red and underlined here. Those are the parts that you would actually add into the Wikipedia article. And then everything that you add is going to be backed up by some direct citation to some scholarly source. So to get that, obviously, so where did I get this fact from? I got it from a scholarly journal article. And what I'm going to do is paste into that footnote the section of text that I learned the fact from and the citation with a page number of the source that I'm using. So I got this fact about the difference between a physic garden and a botanical garden from this article. This article about the origins of botanic gardens. So this is the article that I got that fact from, and I got it from the first page of the PDF, but it's actually page 43, which you can see. Notice that the page numbers go from 43 to 93. That's the specific page number you're going to use. Notice that there's no page number on this first page, but you can sort of infer what page it is, because this is the page number of the next page. So if this is 44, logically this is 43. Also, it's the first page of the paper, and the paper starts on page 43. So sometimes you will have to do a little bit of investigation to figure out what page number you're going from, but we do want page numbers for this because you're going to be doing sort of copy-pasted direct quotes from the source for this. So the fact that I'm using comes from this section of text. So I'll just copy it. So making sure to not have track changes on. I don't want this to be track changed. And I'm making sure to, because this is a direct quotation, making sure to keep it in quotation marks. You'll notice that there's a little bit of formatting difference here, so I'm just going to clean up the formatting a little. And I'm going to include the page number. Okay. So this is the text from which I've distilled this sentence about the difference between a physic garden and a botanical garden. So this is my scholarly source for that fact. Now, of course, I also have to include the actual citation, the full citation for that journal article. So to do that, I'm going to go back to my article. And I won't require that you do the formatting with Word this time because it's just going to be pasted into a footnote. So what I'm going to do is just use my favorite site, Google Scholar, to get the full citation. So copy the title, go to Google Scholar, right? And this is my journal article. And if I click on these, it gives me the full citation, which I can copy into the footnote. Sorry. To keep the font consistent, I'm actually going to paste this with keep text only. So when I'm done, what I see is this. I've got a sentence added in using track changes, so it's in red, underlined, and just being red and underlined is not enough. You have to use the track changes function that does things, for example, like adding in these little bars that if you're skimming through the article, you can see where there are track changes. And at the end of that sentence, at the end of anything that you add to the Wikipedia article, there must be a footnote. That footnote must have the complete text of the scholarly source, the part of the scholarly source where you got that fact, and the page number and the complete citation of where you got it from. So when your TA is looking at your assignment, they'll be able to look at the fact that you added and then go down to the footnote and see the scholarly source where you got that fact from. So this should contain all the information that they need in order to check that you've actually gotten this fact from a scholarly source. You don't want to copy and paste pages and pages into here, just the part that's relevant, but give them enough context to be able to understand what's been included in the footnote. In the rubric, I say that everything that you add should be in clear, accessible language. There shouldn't be any kind of jargon that would be hard for, let's say, the average educated person to understand. I hope that this sentence is fairly clear, but suppose that I added a different sentence which was a little more obscure. So suppose I'm adding to this here, so modern botanical gardens were preceded by medieval physic gardens that originated at the time of Emperor Charlemagne. I would like to know more about that, so I looked it up, and it's not just that it was at the time of Emperor Charlemagne. Charlemagne actually told people to cultivate these kind of gardens. So I'm going to add that fact in. Once again, turning on track changes. Okay, so I've added this claim in. Of course, I'm going to now turn off track changes and insert a footnote to explain where I got this fact from. This time I'm not adding the entire citation again because it's the same citation as in the last footnote. So we're going to follow the convention that historians use, which is if footnote 2 is citing the same source as footnote 1, instead of adding the complete source again, you can just write Ibid. So it's coming from a different page than the first one, so you definitely want to add in the page number that you got it from, but you don't have to add in. So this is the complete reference. Because I'm using the same reference again, I don't have to include this. I can just write Ibid. Supposing that I don't want to explain what the capitulaire de Villis is in the text, I think that's probably beside the point for if you want to learn about physic gardens. So one of the conventions in Wikipedia is, of course, if you don't want to explain something, you can just link to another Wikipedia page that does explain it. I've struggled a bit to figure out how to do this in this assignment because the standard way of adding a link to a Word document doesn't really show up if you've already got track changes on. So you can see these are all links which you can follow to the various Wikipedia pages, but Word indicates that something is a link by turning it blue and underlined, and this is already red and underlined. The compromise that I'd like to suggest is that if you want to avoid having to explain something in detail, you can add a link to another Wikipedia page that does explain it, as is conventional on Wikipedia, and we'll indicate that by using the comment function. Under the review menu, you see new comment. So what we're going to do is select the portion of text that you would like to become like a link, and then click New Comment. Right? So when that does this, it sort of highlights the background in pink. And then in that comment, you can add in the link to the Wikipedia page that you would be using here. Okay, so you don't have to be adding links to other Wikipedia pages into your assignment. That's an option that you have if you find yourself in the position where you want to include some technical language, but you don't want to use the space in order to explain it. If you don't feel like adding in links, you can just explain all the language that you're using or use straightforward language in the first place. Either one of those are fine, but you do have the option of adding in these sort of like pseudo links to avoid having to explain something technical. Okay, so you'll continue on like this until you've added about 500 words to your Wikipedia page. To get an idea of how many words you've actually added, you just select the relevant part of the text. So this is 19 words. That tells me that I've added 19 words in this sentence. Be careful not to include the footnote, otherwise it'll count all of these words. So these words do not count towards your 500 word count. These are just copy pasted from your source. That's not stuff that you've written. So make sure that when you're doing this, don't select the footnote, or else notice we went from 19 to 118. So it's counted all of these words. So that's the project.